It's your girl Nachi, and I'm here with.
Damaris, your favorite teller of hard truths.
Oh, yes. We love when you tell the truth.
Yes,
Tell it
yes.
just like it is.
I try.
Well, I know. Well, we are also delighted to have with us Rianna Patterson. She is the producer and director of the documentary Dementia, The Island Journey, and founder of the Dominica Dementia Foundation. So, dementia is something that hits home for me and Damaris and Rihanna. We're just so happy that you took the time out to talk with us about how that impacts our Caribbean community because it's a little different, right? And so I'd like to welcome you first and also allow you sometimes to just share a little bit about yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation that we're going to have. But for your viewers, hi everyone. It's nice to be on this platform. My name is Rihanna, and I'm the founder of the Dominica Dementia Foundation. So we're a youth-led dementia charity in Dominica. And like the mayor said, I have personal experience with dementia. So my grandfather, he passed away with dementia in Dominica, and that kind of led me to get involved in dementia work. Most recently, I actually directed a documentary film on dementia in the Caribbean. So that
Mhm.
project was pretty exciting to pull together. But basically, the key take-home message is, we are able to live well with dementia. There's a
Mhm.
lot going around in terms of positive aging, aging well, living well, and holistic practices related to dementia. So I just wanted to also bring that and tie that into a medium that can be accessible to everyone. So I did that as well, and I'm currently doing my master's in dementia in England. So yeah, that is pretty much me in a nutshell.
Nice. I love it. I love it. I like I said, it's something that hits home for us because both of our parents have been hit with or with dementia, and it's been a journey for the both of us in how to navigate that world and still make them feel like this is not the end of the world, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that has been really important for us.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic too because I feel like growing up, I didn't really see older relatives
Mhm.
dealing with dementia in the way that I'm feeling now in our generation. We're seeing our parents or even grandparents, but I'd say even just parents because we're dealing with it directly that there's there's more of a prevalence of it in the Caribbean that I feel like I just didn't see as a child. I'm
hmm
curious to hear from you. Is that, what are you seeing in Caribbean communities and what kind of how is it manifesting?
Yeah, certainly. Well, for starters, Caribbean communities are often grouped with Latin American communities, as you may know. So, in terms of the stats that we have, they're normally grouped. So, Latin American and Caribbean communities have an estimated 8.5 prevalence of dementia, which is expected to increase by 19.33% by
Mhm.
2050. And that is according to the Lancet, which is a notable publication.
Mm.
Um, so that is quite large numbers for our community. So it's definitely on a higher prevalence in the region.
Yeah, and it's It's interesting too because of the fact that we're now of this generation that's having to deal with it and we've not seen it growing up, right? You think about when you're growing up, you see an example of like, okay, this is how my mom supported her family, her elders, her parents, and we don't really have the same model because my parents didn't have to care for their parents in the same way that we were caring for them. And you
Absolutely.
know, and when you think about it in Caribbean cultures, and for us, it's, we're coming from, our peoples come from Dominican Republic. It's this idea of we always care for our elders, right? Like that's just a
Mhm.
priority.
Yes.
even to even means sacrificing your self-care, right?
Right.
And now it's like, and even the how we look at dementia, um it's like, oh, it's just forgetting, right? And
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
manageable, right? And it's like, well, not quite
It's a
in the
lot
way,
more. Yeah.
right? So like these cultural attitudes, it's, I think it's unique to, there's certain things that are unique to the Caribbean culture, and the beliefs around aging and dementia. What are, what are those kinds of challenges that you've seen in the making of your movie, and just getting into this space?
Yeah, I think even the term caregiving is quite loosely understood in our community because
Yes,
when people think about
yes.
caregiving, they think about personal care, you're bathing the person, and so on.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
caregiving can be just light work, like, going to the shop for granny, for a couple of items.
Mhm.
That is also
Yes.
caregiving. But people will not say that they're a carer because they do that because that's just part of the culture. You're always fetching something for somebody. But
Hmm.
that is also part of it. But yeah, other cultural attitudes and beliefs, some people still believe that dementia is a normal part of aging. And, they will refer to their family members being senile, which is a stigmatized term
Yes.
um,
Yes.
used in our culture. And then there's also some communities that don't even have a name for dementia specifically.
Hmm.
So the concept can be quite hard to conceptualize in these communities. In other instances, they're like people that associate dementia with witchcraft as well. And in our
Mm.
culture, it's normal for someone to say, "Oh, that lady, do something bad in life, and that's why she's so." So we really need to
Right.
work on bringing in the scientific understanding of dementia to the wider public, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, because it gets into, that's a perfect segue into this idea of the challenges and the stigma with it, right? Especially the stigma of the individuals living with dementia, and then the challenges that the caregivers are facing, because again,
Mm-hmm.
the term caregiving is, it varies, right?
Yeah.
To by the individual, because culturally we, like you said, it's like literally, unless you're like bathing them, that's, we don't consider it caregiving. But it's like, no, I handle my mom's finances, that is a form of caregiving. She's
Mm-hmm.
no longer able to maintain that, or so. But the idea of the stigma, this, like you said, either calling people senile or saying that they're going crazy, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
it diminishes, um you know, them, their their esteem, if you will, right? And so,
Exactly.
and I think, so it's interesting. Oh, hold
I think that
on.
that leads to
This.
isolation, right? Because they,
Hmm.
you know, in their own ignorance, they want to protect the person, their loved one, because they're like, because, they themselves feel like, oh, they're going senile and this is not something, this person is very proud, or this is not, the how they want
Hmm.
to present themselves to the rest of the world. So let's just keep them away from everyone. And then even them, the person themselves living
Mm-hmm.
with dementia, I feel like they become self-isolating just because they don't want to appear as if they're losing it. Yes.
Hmm.
Mhm.
That they're off, or that
Yes.
they're not
And I think that
a
was
hundred
something that we
percent.
struggled with Bobby, our father. He was a very proud man. He was,
Yes.
our rock. And
Hmm.
we were the ones who leaned on him. He was the provider. He was just like he was the source that everyone went to. So I think that
Hmm.
whole transition where he started losing certain abilities was a struggle for him. And even when trying to present
Right.
certain things
Mm.
that will help him and aid him in this
Hmm.
journey, he was just resistant to it because it was like, no, I can do
Wow.
this. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. And, in a sense. So,
Right. Eh, yeah. No, I was just gonna say that also with dementia, what I've found as a caregiver, and just looking at both of our parents, is that the causes are very unique and different. So there's also this, there needs to be an understanding of the idea that there isn't just one, like, oh, dementia's hereditary and I'm just getting older and there's a mental decline. For my father, it was very specific. It was a result of his strokes. It wasn't from
Mm,
aging, because it wasn't till he had his stroke, and then he had two other major strokes on top of the first major one. And so
wow. So
all
it's kind of
that is
like
cumulative.
vascular risk
Yes,
factors.
yes,
Mm,
exactly. And so that was just, that's why he was, as Nachi had just described, that he was trying to not pretend, but just trying to not talk about or really highlight the fact that he wasn't doing well. And that's because he knew of, those changes internally, caused by his brain hemorrhage, right? And so
right.
that was that was difficult to see. And then by that third major stroke, it was just a severe decline, and it was
Wow.
just then full on dementia. Yeah. And so, interestingly enough, my mother's cause of dementia for her was when she had to care for him. And this is part of that dialogue of being a caregiver. They've been together for 48 years. So when he became ill from the stroke, she put her all into caring for him, even though
Wow.
she was also in her, late 60s, 70s. So it's just like, you also, we don't recognize that as caregivers. There was no blueprint to follow with how to care for someone that has dementia. And so for my
Exactly.
mom, it was just, oh, I'm going to go, just do everything possible. But you're one person, because my sister and I, we lived out of state. So while, yes, I was going to visit and trying to help my mom full time, that was her doing that. And so this idea that there are these cultural beliefs of we have to prioritize the other person's care above our own ended up
Mm,
causing my mom to, because she was operating from high cortisol levels so long, of just like, she mentally, that affected her to the point
wow.
that she ended up getting dementia. And for us with her, we've been able to stabilize it through the help of our naturopathic family doctor. But it's interesting how, because she was just brought up in that very traditional mindset, and then there's no blueprint of how do you help someone that has dementia in your life that you're so close to, i.e. her husband, the father of her children. It's it ended up affecting her, and then he passed away. And so it's just like, then it's like, wow, not, I'm feeling like, can we get a break? Right? It's a
Yeah.
Yeah.
lot. It's intense.
Wow.
Oh, thank you.
My
Yeah.
heart goes out to you both. That is a
Thank
lot.
you. Yeah, no, it's and so, speaking, and not sure, you could probably speak to more because mommy lives with you now, but this idea of like, I feel like oh, and you could probably speak to this, but because we have to look, or consider rather, new paradigms and new models of how we take care of our elders, all right, or now understanding dementia a little bit better. But we have to be open to the fact that sometimes we need to consider resources that in our community we never would have, like
Yeah.
assisted living facilities. That was something we ultimately had to do with my father, because we needed professionals to help him towards the end of his life. We no longer
Mm,
were able to care for him because he required a significant amount of care that, just like, my mom is 70. We don't live in Florida full time. It was just a lot.
wow.
Um, yeah, it's just, it's that sense of guilt that you have, and that's just culturally we deal with that because we're taught that we all have to, take part in caring for our loved one, but not being able to do so, it does, it does affect you. But like Tamara said, we had to kind of change our thought process, because does it make
Mm.
sense for mommy to be taking care of him when she's not able to provide the level of care that he needs at that age? and both Damaris and I didn't live there, lived in Florida.
Hmm.
So it's difficult to do that. And I know that was just like a heavy guilt on her as well, because even
Yes.
when he was at the assisted living facility, she was going there every day and cooking, making sure he was eating.
Wow.
And
And
mind
it
you,
was like, they feed him. You don't
that's what we're
have to.
paying them for. And it got to the point, and this is why I was referring to with my mother, how it caused her own decline, mentally, because the amount of effort she put in regularly to go see him, we had to tell her, like, you can't go see him every day. It was just so much on her, like, because it was a 30-minute drive one way. But how do
Oh,
you tell someone who, is just like, no, this is the love of my life. I for better or for worse, but I'm like, also, but not for better or for worse for you either. And it was just,
yeah.
it's a tough conversation. And Nachi and I, we had a lot of guilt too, just as children, like, wow, we're failing, right? Because we have to ultimately put him in an assisted living facility. What? Like, we weren't ready for that. But I will say,
Mm.
I'm so grateful for the place that we ended up finding, because it was run by a Jamaican gentleman. So it's like someone
Oh,
from the Caribbean.
lovely.
And yes, and it was a home. So he had a maximum of 6 um, people that live there at any given time, and then full-time staff. And so we left there feeling good when we found that place, because
Mm.
he would grow certain vegetables, and also combine their medication though, but give them like juices that would be good for their blood pressure and things like that from the fruit that grew in
Fantastic.
his backyard. Yeah, so, but not everyone gets that
Yeah.
luxury, and I'm grateful that we did, but it was a journey for that. Is that like, what are those types of stories that you hear from the Caribbean about that?
Well, definitely we have a few people that do distance caregiving. So we have some families in our network, in the US as well as in the UK, who are taking care of their family members with dementia in Dominica, either
Hmm.
by paying for their carers in Dominica or residential care home fees. And all of that can be quite costly. And just to
Yes.
manage that is almost like a full-time job, right? Because of
Hmm.
the time zones and all sorts of things. So, yeah, even some families, they manage the care responsibilities within the family. So sometimes the person might be at granny's on the weekend or
Hmm.
at auntie's during the week, depending on everyone's working pattern, just to kind of manage that. So they'll have like a timetable, to support their family members if they're not able to cover the costs of care homes in Dominica. So there's a lot of that happening. So I think that is definitely something that we're seeing that is trending a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do how are you finding, like, bringing more awareness and education in these, and reduce to help reduce the stigma around dementia, and also just the educational aspect of understanding what dementia is?
Yeah, so at the Dominica Dementia Foundation, we have several campaigns that we've done to raise awareness of
Hmm.
dementia. One was a talk at a local primary school in Portsmouth. So we got some kids to march in the streets of Portsmouth, with
Mm.
banners that had positive messages on aging and
Yeah.
dementia. And we try to, kind of cover dementia care as well as risk factors of dementia and the warning signs to look out for on our social media platforms, as well as amplifying positive stories on aging, as
Mm.
communities can work together to live well with dementia. So it's just creating that balance of here's the reality, but also here are practical solutions that you can also think about and broaden people's perspective so they don't just think one way of dementia because there's
Right.
multiple ways of thinking about this situation. And we also have an ambassador program with the Dominica State College. So we had some
Mm.
interns with us a couple years ago as well, and that was really helpful. We learned a lot from them as they did from us. And we're trying to reach all the communities as much as we can. So we've done,
Hmm.
newspaper articles with the Dominica News Online, the Chronicle, radio talks. We've had an interview with DBS Radio with Carlton,
Mm.
from Jolly's Pharmacy as a group. and we had some really interesting and enriching conversations. And some people also called in as well to contribute to the
Yes.
conversation, so that was really helpful. And then the last thing on that, I would say we also have a Dominica Dementia Friends program, and
Hmm.
that is free and accessible to all communities. So if people want to do a training with us, then we do that as well, just to kind of increase the knowledge in communities.
Yeah, I think doing that really helps in reducing the stigma around dementia, right? Like one is like bringing awareness, but then also the education around it. I
Yes.
think the more we talk about it in our communities, then the more it's accepted, and also then understanding that there are various forms of help and various models of how you care for someone going through dementia. So I think
Hmm.
that, and I appreciate you sharing the resources, and I wonder, um, is your plan also to expand that to other Caribbean islands and nations?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I had a conversation recently with an organization, sorry, that supports people in India, and we were talking about
Mm,
maybe having like a cross-cultural knowledge sharing something.
hmm.
So that is something that we're definitely considering. And then also regionally, happy to collaborate with other Alzheimer's associations in the Caribbean. We have several of them. We have Alzheimer's Barbados, Alzheimer's Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Jamaica has an Alzheimer's association as well. So yeah, always up for collaborating. We did a collaboration with Amplify Caribbean. I think they're originally based in Trinidad, but that was
Mm,
about, yeah, just sharing culturally appropriate campaigns on dementia,
right.
what it is, how to manage it and stuff like that.
So it's, for us, it was interesting because when I think about for my father and my mother, they both speaking, they were born, raised speaking Spanish. That was their language, of origin. But
Uh-huh.
when they learned English, when they both got hit with dementia, my mom especially, she reverts way more to Spanish now than she does to the English. Even, and it's just like something I think it's just like part of what she's losing
I
with the
see.
dementia. Yeah, so she speaks more English, I mean more Spanish, especially to people who don't speak Spanish. Like I'm like, "Mommy, no, English, they don't know." And then she'll like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." But it's funny how she is now reverting back to Spanish. So it's
Mm,
it's, yeah, it's just very interesting how dementia really affects people and how they
absolutely.
operate. It's and that's why it's just like there's no one size fits all kind of solution when it comes to
Yeah.
caring for individuals with dementia. Um, how was it with your grandfather?
Yeah, I mean, it was different things. His personality changed. He was
Hmm.
quite frustrated.
Yeah,
And he's
it's
quite a
almost like they
quiet
know in
guy.
their mind that
Yeah,
they're thinking straight in their mind, but they can't, eh, you know, um, actually express that externally.
exactly. Exactly. So, and yeah, he was a quiet guy, like before the dementia and after he was like very frustrated all the time and um
Mm,
didn't was restless, really restless as well. And he lost weight and
hmm.
yeah, he just became someone that I was conversating with, but I wasn't even getting any feedback. I wasn't sure if he was listening or,
Right.
it became like a one-way conversation. Like I was talking to him and not with him. And that was really
Right.
hard because, yeah, we
Yes.
didn't have any engagement or anything like that. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I didn't know how to navigate it. Honestly, it's emotionally, it's a lot.
Because I feel like these stories help people that are also dealing with their own
Hmm.
loved ones, and
Yeah.
they can then feel like, okay, yeah, I can relate to that. Rihanna, can you share that again? I know you shared it before.
Yeah, sure. I mean, with the situation with my grandfather, he spoke English and Creole, but Creole is just our native language.
Hmm. Right.
But we
Hmm.
more speak English than Creole. Like he will speak Creole with my let's say auntie, with my gran. but yeah, mainly English. And he continued to speak English, but he became non-verbal at a point in time. So it's like I was having a conversation, I was speaking to him and not with him because I wasn't getting any feedback,
Right.
any eye contact, any engagement whatsoever. And that was emotionally, hard to take in
Mm-hmm.
because,
Mm-hmm.
we always had our little talks and our little conversations, and it just wasn't the same anymore. Um,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, as mommy said, Tamara said, mommy would just start talking Spanish. She flips, and it's funny because there's a lady that comes and see her, twice a day just to kind of be her companion while I'm working. And she doesn't speak any Spanish. But, they'll start talking and she starts whipping out the Spanish, and I'm laughing because the poor lady, I've heard her at times say, well, can you repeat that in English? And my
She's
mother's
so
Oh,
nice
bless.
about it.
yeah. And my mother's like, well, you
Wow.
better speak Spanish.
My mother's like, you better learn Spanish. Yeah, no, it's pretty
Oh,
hilarious,
Oh
but
my goodness. It's, we have to laugh at it because it's,
yeah.
it's just part
Yeah.
of life. But it's, it's also, it's a reminder, and for us at least, because I know in the beginning I used to tell her, Mama, she doesn't know how, she doesn't speak English. And the same with my kids. My kids doesn't speak Spanish, so she'll say it, and then she'll,
ah,
I'll remind her and say, they don't speak Spanish, Mommy. And she's like, well, they should learn. And then she'll keep
We're
speaking
like,
in
yes,
Spanish.
but that's not the way they're gonna learn.
Right.
We agree,
So,
but
right. So it's just gotten to a point where it's just like, just let her speak. Just let her speak. And now people just like, they'll respond to her based on her off of her cues as to
wow.
what she's trying to say. So they're like,
Oh my
yes,
goodness.
no, we're not doing that. so so it's almost hilarious, but it's just like you have to adapt and
yes,
allow
Yeah.
them to just be, because sometimes you have to pivot,
you have to flow
and
with it. Mm-hmm.
yes, and just meet them where they are, just
Mm-hmm.
like cooking was a big thing for my mother. She was
Yeah.
the cook.
Mm,
You know, if we went to go visit her in Florida, she's making everything that we love to eat, right? It's just like,
Yes.
wow.
oh, and we definitely miss that. But now, you have to be with her. You have to kind of work with her and
Mm-hmm.
be in the kitchen. So allowing her to cook, and not saying, no, you can't do that, but just allowing her to
Exactly.
do certain things and just be there as a support.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so,
Be there
Mhm.
as a sous chef, as Nachi says.
no,
She'll
yes,
be her sous chef.
yes. And she's always asking, and the thing is, it's like, she'll always ask you, like, well, should I do this or should I do that? And I'll say, well, what is it that you normally do? Right? Just to see if it'll come to
Mm,
her. But, she'll think about it and she'll start doing something and she'll ask again, what do you think I should be doing? So it's going back and forth with her, but allowing her to just do the things, or at least feel like she's doing the things that she used to do. And I think that's really important, at least what I've
absolutely.
experienced is that it's important to allow them, although you may experience something different to them, it's normal, right? It's just like, yes, I'm cooking. It may not be the same in the same fashion that they did before, but it's what she's doing now, and it makes her feel good because she did
Mhm.
something. She wasn't relying on me or anyone else doing it for her. And I think when things like that happen, they start to realize, like, oh yeah, there's something's wrong with me. Because at times
Mhm.
Right.
she'll say, yes, I used to have dementia. I'm like,
And we're like,
okay.
okay, that's right. Rebuke dementia, mommy. We're like, yes, rebuke it. You don't have it anymore. Speak it into existence.
It's like, but you gotta like walk and you gotta do this. You can't just be sitting around doing nothing.
We're like, that's right, mommy. No, you can't. And I will say that is we I mentioned earlier that for us we have stabilized her decline, and that
Yep.
has been through the help of our
Yeah.
naturopathic family doctor. And I know you mentioned early on in the episode about there are methods and things that we can do to help and aid our loved ones that are suffering from this. Because and to me, there's a lot of environmental factors. I mean, we could talk about it for
Yes.
days. Food, the amount of processed foods that have things
Yes,
that have
yes,
triggered
yes.
that. Especially again, when you think about in the Caribbean, previous generations, they didn't really deal with this at the same level. Not saying that they
Right.
didn't have any dementia cases, but not at the
Mm-hmm.
same prevalence. But then they were also eating differently. They didn't have a lot of imported processed foods. And
Absolutely.
I'm throwing it out there, and I don't care, because we had episodes on big food, and it is a predator to our health, right?
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
um, and there's even recently I came across a study that linked sugary drinks to higher risk factors for
Oh,
dementia.
don't get
And
me started on sugary
yeah,
drinks.
sugary drinks being, i.e., soda.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm not about soda at all anymore. I stopped
oh
drinking
my
it years
goodness.
ago, you know.
Really?
But
No,
it's
it's
so
no
Yeah.
engrossed
joke.
in our culture. Like even in
Yes.
Yes.
Mexico, they had a whole documentary about Coca-Cola and the effects of it and how people was talking about, I think, the kind of consequences as el susto. Like if you had it, it was like something that you did after a loved
Mm-hmm.
one, so you're grieving, or there was a
Mm-hmm,
whole
Oh.
cultural
mm-hmm,
situation in terms of that. And diabetes and hypertension and all of these things
mm-hmm.
exist in our culture and they coexist with dementia. So you have
Right.
to manage the risk factors of the diabetes
Yes.
and the hypertension as well as
Yes.
dementia.
Mm-hmm,
So yeah.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, a lot of it is lifestyle changes, right? And so again, for us growing up, my parents, they ate well, and they were never really into those
Mm-hmm.
sugary drinks, but we shared with you, but they had different causes, right? One was a
Mm-hmm.
stroke, the other was the level
Yes.
of stress, the cortisol levels for an extended period of time. Like, that was just damaging to my mom's nervous system. So
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
it is different for everyone. Um and when we go back to the cultural, like, practices and things that we need to take into consideration, I find that certain things that really that does help mommy has been music from her
Yes.
culture. Like, she'll hear that, and
amazing.
it's like it'll
Yes,
it'll
she
liven
loves
her
that.
up. Yeah, it'll give her a spark
Mm-hmm.
of life. We're like, yes, let's play some merengue, whatever, bachata,
Right.
whatever she needs to hear to
Crank
to
up the
lift her
music.
spirits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's I think those things kind of help when you take into account, like, from culturally, what has always, like, what brings up the mood for your loved ones. And for my mom, it's music, it's family gatherings, it's
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
cooking, as Nachi mentioned, and food. And so those are things that I feel like people can think about, of what has made them happy in the past, and introducing that, because this doesn't have to be a sentence of, like, misery.
Mhm.
We can
Mhm.
Right.
figure out
Right.
ways of trying to make it work, right? And
Yeah.
for us,
Absolutely.
like, we've stabilized because we have her on a regimen of natural supplements that
Mhm.
we're working on with our caregiver. I mean, our healthcare provider. And so it's finding those outlets. And I'm curious to hear from you about,
Mhm.
you shared some resources specific to Dominica, but are there things that internationally, or just resources that people should tap into when considering these when considering caring for dementia, or wanting to understand?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alzheimer's Disease International has a lot of resources in terms
Mm,
of promoting dementia-friendly communities, supporting the government on developing a national plan, just informal caregiving in itself. And their resources have a global focus related to the Caribbean and other regions. So I would definitely say check out their resources and their website. There's also the Dementia Friends website, and you can find different resources there as well. There's training, there's webinars, I believe, so that is also a good resource, and that is also a global network. So there's Dementia Friends in Dominica that's
right.
supported by us, but there's also Dementia Friends, I think, also in the Dominican Republic,
Mm,
and other parts in
Okay.
the Caribbean. So I would definitely recommend
that's
checking
great.
that out. And then there's also Culture Dementia UK. So it's a bit UK based, but I'm sure you could adapt the resources. But they have a few
Mm-hmm.
things on ethnicity and dementia communities. So that might be worth checking out as well.
Oh, that's
Perfect.
good. That's nice. And we'll get if some of those things that we can't find, if you can help us with the links, we'll add it to the show notes too, because I think that sounds great and it'll be easier for people to access.
Yeah,
And
of
then
course. Yeah.
just, lastly, something that came up that as we were talking, what are things that you feel like can be done to help reduce the risk for people and dementia? Because I think the other thing too is that Nachi and I, we saw our parents and we're like, okay, we're breaking that curse, and this is what we're not going to do so
Amen.
that we don't increase any risk of dementia for ourselves. One is my father, he had his strokes because he refused to address his hypertension. So
Wow.
he ended up getting a stroke because he's like, I don't believe I have high blood pressure.
Yes, because he
Okay,
didn't
it's not a
feel any
belief.
symptoms.
It's but
Mm,
it's a hidden disease where you don't feel different, but your
Right.
body is not functioning well because
yeah.
you have high blood pressure. So my sister and I were like, okay, what are we doing? What are we eating? How, and are we tracking our high blood pressure? Because we know it runs in our family. So we do that. And
Ah.
we're mindful of what we eat, because I'm like, my father's an example of what I don't, that's an example of how I don't want to
Right.
follow in getting
Right.
dementia. My mom is the other
Absolutely.
one. We put a lot of focus on our episodes and always center back on self-care. What are
Mm-hmm.
you doing to take care of yourself? And sometimes that means, well, it should not even sometimes, it should always mean that you put yourself first. And it's not about being selfish, it's being self-full, because you
Mm-hmm.
can't give if your cup is empty, right?
Yep.
You're running on fumes. And that's what my mom did. She ran on fumes to the
Wow.
For
point
a
to her
very
own
long time.
detriment
Yeah.
for a very long time. And so those are things that Nachi and I, we try to be actively mindful of so that we don't go down the same path. But I'm curious, from your work and your research, what have you seen that you're like, this is what people right now should be doing to help reduce that risk in the future? So
Yeah,
we
I
don't have
mean,
to be
there's
part of that percentage, that in 2050.
I agree. I agree. I mean, the Lancet is quite interesting. They publish like modifiable risk factors in Latin Caribbean communities, and a few things came up as hearing loss. Hearing loss is a big thing. So ensuring
Mm-hmm.
that we're
Huh.
regularly checking on our ear health is really important,
Mm-hmm.
because that is
Mm-hmm.
also decreasing your risk of dementia.
Mm,
Also ensuring that you have good physical health. So exercise is a big thing. Even just taking, a few minutes to walk, a couple times a day can also help.
mm-hmm,
And
Mm-hmm.
then also ensuring that you're not facing loneliness, because depression is also a risk factor of dementia. So, connecting with people, having social groups, sorts of things. And then it's also about cognitive reserve. So ensuring that you can protect what you already have. So your memory and so on, doing puzzles, doing
Mm-hmm.
maybe learning a new language or something
mm-hmm,
like that can also help in terms of maintaining and even improving memory, I
mm.
would say. So there's a lot of things that, we
I
can
love
work
that.
on. Yeah.
No,
Yeah, Travis
I
love
love
her some
puzzles.
puzzles.
I love a puzzle.
I
And no,
love
and
a puzzle as well.
yes, yes. At night, I have an app and I play brain games. I'm like, you're not gonna get me, dementia. And
I
my
love
husband's
it.
like, what are you doing? And he'll see like this game with like dots and balls and all this stuff. And he's like, okay, like I'm like, you're not gonna get me. But look, actively, like I said,
Yes.
Nachi and I,
Mm-hmm.
having seen it firsthand and seeing our parents deal with it, and it's just like, I don't want that for myself.
I
And
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, you have to
so,
do everything possible that's within your means, and take action and take
and you
care
have to
of
do it
Mm,
yourself.
now,
Yeah.
yeah.
because I
Mm-hmm.
think what people also um don't understand is that, or may not realize, is that it's not an immediate onset. Dementia is something that's been gradually building. And then
Yes.
it's
Mm-hmm.
like, when you see it manifest externally, it's because it's already been doing its thing internally
Right.
and
Right.
for a
Absolutely.
while. And so, and that definitely was the case with our parents.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that that's an issue with a lot of people. It's like you always think, "Oh, I have time. I'll do that later."
Yeah.
Or I'll start tomorrow or next week or whatever the case may be. And it just reminded me of a story that I heard from a provider, and this was diabetes related. And she was just
Mm.
saying that she had like two different patients, and they were both pre-diabetic. And she said,
Wow.
if you don't take care of yourself within 10 years, you're going
Mm.
to develop diabetes. So one patient,
Mm.
when gun ho was taking care of himself, changed his eating habits, was exercising, and he was, when she saw him the next time a year later for his physical, he was fine. Like he was doing well. He looked good. The second patient that came to see her, she actually ended up having diabetes. And
Mm.
she didn't take any accountability for herself. She said, "You told me I had 10 more years."
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So
Wow.
she took that message as, "Oh, I have time." So it's just like when you think about dementia, like a lot of people think, "Oh, that
Mm.
happens when you're old."
Mm-hmm.
But no, as Damara said, this is something that gradually happens, and you have to,
Absolutely.
start now and taking care of yourself, and making sure that you're um, doing everything possible to improve your brain health. It's important that we just have to take the time
Mm.
to deal with our own brain health and not think that dementia is something that's going to hit us later in life, as when we get old. That I met someone who literally he was only like 50 and he was diagnosed with dementia.
Mm.
So
Mm.
we got to think about, we always have to just, our brain is just like everything else in our body. We have to exercise it. We have to work on it. We have to make sure that we're feeding it well.
Yes.
It's like an abundance of factors that we have to take into consideration
Right.
when we're taking care of ourselves. So don't wait until later, or,
That's the message.
something. Yes.
That's the message. Rianna, do you have any final parting words of like, we shared a lot and you shared a great, an abundance of resources and information for our listeners. And so are there any last things that you're like, no, wait, I think make sure that people consider XYZ that you want to share?
Um, I would just say, just kind of bringing back our thing about dieting. I think it's really important to factor these things into dementia care.
Hmm.
So sitting down with your family member and creating a culturally appropriate care plan. I think
Yeah.
Yes.
that's a really key thing to do, and that would involve dieting. It will involve lifestyle choices such as like physical activity, and spiritual health as well, which is a big thing for us
Mm.
in the
Yes.
Caribbean. So, if they can't go to church in person, just tuning into church virtually can be, some sort of physical, spiritual activity that they can do, and just keeping them up to date with things that's happening in the community or in the family. And I know some care homes in Dominica have incorporated like a list of Creole activities for residents. So that can also be something that is happening in the household as well. Just wearing Creole wear, or putting on these songs that you're saying earlier on that your family member
Hmm.
enjoys, because it really
Hmm.
helps. Music
It
is a
does.
powerful tool. Dance is a powerful tool. Laughter is a
Yes.
powerful
Yes.
tool. So,
Praise God.
just
Yes.
taking, those moments of joy, and just making it
Hmm.
memorable. It means a
Yeah.
lot. So, yeah, I think that would be my parting parting message.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no. And then lastly, where can listeners find you again?
Yeah, I'm actually everywhere. So I'm on Instagram, so at Rianna Patterson _. I'm on Twitter, at Rianna Patterson. Facebook, if you wish, Rianna Patterson, and LinkedIn as well. So just Rianna Patterson, but MBPS at the end of all of that. But yeah,
Okay. Awesome. And we'll also include that in the show notes. I appreciate that. And then,
amazing.
we just want to say we hope that we covered a lot in this conversation. Resources, our personal experiences of what you may be able to relate to for
Mm-hmm.
folks in your life that may be dealing with dementia. So we just hope that from this conversation, people are able to extrapolate what it is that they need to help them in their journey with their loved ones about dementia, or just preparing themselves for a future of, like, we rebuke dementia. So that being
Yes.
said, we appreciate our listeners joining in and participating in this. And as always, we like to close our episodes with, there's a lot of noise out there, but our message is consistent. Stop getting distracted by the smoke and mirrors, tune out the noise, and focus on your divine purpose in life. Vibrate higher to elevate your frequency. And always, thank you for listening.